Okay, welcome everyone to the Keshe Plasma Reactor Group for Wednesday, January 1st, 2020. It's a production of the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute Education Department and part of the Public Teachings in English. I'm your host, Rick Crammond, and I'm not sure how the day is going to go here because it is January 1st and it's 7 a.m. on January 1st in Europe, and it's not even 2020 in my part of the world, so we have yet to celebrate the transition into the new year. So I'm not sure if I'll carry on here. We'll see if we have enough people to carry a conversation. And let me, I just want to show the video briefly here. Okay, I think that's correct. Oops, that didn't quite work. There we go. No, doesn't work either. Just bear with me a second here. Figure out where I went astray. Ah, there we go. Right, there we are. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Keshe Plasma Reactor Group. So, device here. I was going to show something. I'm not sure what happened to it in the. Oh, there we go. It's right there. All right. Yeah, we only have a few people here today, but maybe we'll have enough to carry on with what we like to do. So I just wanted to show a demonstration that I just kind of picked up or just got reminded of when I was playing around with one of the little detectors, a voltage detector. You normally stick it into a socket or onto a wire, such as on this heater, and we've all seen the beep and the light that this little device puts off when it encounters a voltage. So it has to be quite close to the voltage normally. I noticed that and also oops. There we go. You have to do it just right, but of course on this also, it doesn't matter what the, well, that's not working. That's interesting. This one does. So what's with that, eh? Or is it our body will set off a voltage detector that's normally designed for household current, household voltage rather. Okay, just wanted to throw that in there as a reminder that our body is and contains fields that are not necessarily visible to us, entirely out of the visible spectrum. Okay, well, we have a few people here. Welcome to 2020, probably in your part of the planet Earth. And it's pretty big numbers for, it's a new decade. We have January 1st is 01012020. It's kind of fun numerically. So we'll have all kinds of interesting coincidences with numbers during this year. And it's a big year in terms of various predictions and through many religions and philosophies. So we expect to have a lot of new surprises this year and new developments and great, wonderful technology, as well as changes in society and cultures, and all of the nations of the world signing the No War Treaty. That's the latest thing from the Keshe Foundation. Is they've had a peace treaty for a number of years now. I've got a peace treaty signed up on the wall, and various people, virtually everyone in the Keshe Foundation has signed a peace treaty, or at least should if they're involved with it. And any business dealings Mr. Keshe does, the participants are required to sign a peace treaty as well. But now they've gone, seeing that world peace seems to be pretty hard to come by. It's a big step. So maybe we'll go back one step and have a no war treaty. So if the nations can't agree to peace, perhaps they can at least agree to no war, to not killing and damaging the people in other parts of the world or other nations. So it's an interesting idea, the no war treaty. How many countries will be brave enough to sign a no war treaty and engage in actually ending the production of weapons and ending the going off and using the military to forcefully exert the will of a nation on some other nation. So I think we're living in different times, and we have to learn to get together and work together and play together, because the alternative is annihilation. And I don't think most of us want that on this planet. So with the new return to sender technology, that seems to be indicated for the future. Doesn't matter how big a bomb you make, if it gets returned to sender, the bigger the bomb, the bigger it's going to blow up in your face. It's like having a gun with a barrel that comes right back at you. Why would you shoot a gun like that if you knew that your bomb was going to come back and bomb your own people because of the new technology? So that more or less makes bombs obsolete. And it's time to rethink what the heck we're doing on this planet, killing other humans anyway. Killing animals and killing trees and just generally killing anything that we see in front of us that can make a profit. Holy cow. Anyway, I think we're leading into a wonderful new future where peace will prevail one way or another. And it will be enforced, or it'll be offered, or it'll be encouraged, and it'll be educated about. And we'll have peace inside of ourselves, and peace, therefore, will generate itself over the planet. But I'm open to other opinions and or any new cool devices you might have developed over the last week or 2 or 3 years. And any other comments, questions, or topics, as we tend to do in this rather eclectic group here. Anybody care to comment or go ahead?
Well, this is Mosfik. Happy New Year on my end. Your end is still kind of getting there.
Yes.
So, it's good that we wish for peace, and this is important. And I think this no war treaty, that would be, because I think we are a bit slow. So I think we need a smaller step, and no war is probably a smaller step.
It's brilliant, I think. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I
like,
think
okay.
it's nice. It's really.
And not to mention the idea that's been put forward by Mr. Keshe that the and I guess the whole thing is actually supported by the Universal Council as well. And as I explained to somebody actually today, this Universal Council is willing to step forward if there are nations that do not wish to sign the No War Treaty, then it will be signed for them by the members of the member of the Universal Council responsible for that nation. So it'll be handled one way or another. Again, it's the will to have peace is there, and it will be implemented regardless of those who would rather not have that way. So sorry, go ahead. I just kind of interjected there.
No, that was good actually, and the as you said, the will prevail, and this is it's noticeable actually that you'll hear some noise a little bit, but uh, the the will of the people. I mean, there are a lot of people who want peace and no war, and it's becoming the the force is becoming stronger and stronger, and so those who are not in there, they will fade away. And yes, it may take a few days for it to fade away, but the important part is this fading away, and we keep the momentum of this wave going. And this is important, um, not in the sense of just not having war or peace, because underlying this is much of the malice, call it poverty, and my where I am, for example, it's very related to this whole thing. So as soon as we go to this peaceful environment, automatically we are prosperous. We are no longer trying to steal from another, and, by force. We are starting to respect each other. I mean, for whatever unique abilities we possess. And as we come together and work together, right, we will move much quicker. The thing is that, it used to be one step forward, two step backward kind of situation. and and if all the steps are going in the same direction, I mean, we are actually all capable and unique in our own ways. So, and we are starting to recognize this as we mix with people from various different parts of the world, and we can, some in some things, because of the environment or upbringing or whatever, we are a little better. And then as we recognize that, yes, my friend in the neighborhood is also uh, unique and capable in his or her own way. So this is a sort of like a nice training ground for us for the for our next stage of contact with the bigger village, the other planets, right? So that bigger village part is I'm very interested in that part, and we are getting our basic education of meeting other nation, people from meeting other nation. Now we will meet with other planetary entities or even non-planetary entities, and I think this will be a nice way of introduction and a way of stepping into the new reality, so to speak. Go ahead, Rick. I'll stop here.
Well, that's a big idea you introduced there, and it reminded me of my basic reason for existence in a way. When I was a kid, of course, it was the beginning of the space program, and I would have been what 9 or 10 years old or something when they went to the moon. But before that, we had astronauts going up into space and coming down, splashing it down in the ocean and all this. And that's what I wanted to be when I was young, to be a spaceman. And it was kind of a thing, but it wasn't just to go to space. It was because of that interaction with some other life forms, or the search for life, at least, would be part of that whole adventure. It was that's kind of like, why would you just want to go to space and hang out at the space station or something? It's kind of a lonely existence in a way. And yes, you might have anti-gravity, which could be a thrill for not anti-gravity, but you would be floating, let's say, with zero gravity for a limited period of time. But it would be a thrill for a limited period of time, and you'd probably get used to it and quite bored being by yourself in space. But if you're there with others, that's one thing, but you could be with others on Earth as well. But the thing about space is the chance of encountering beings from other places that may not have been so chastised by Earth. What's that? Hello, I'm not sure. I heard a voice come through, but then it didn't. Yeah, so that's the big elephant in the room in a way. All this talk of going to space. Well, where are the other living beings? And now we're finding water on virtually every planet in the solar system, probably all through the entire universe. And as we know, at least on planet Earth, there is not one single drop of water anywhere that doesn't have living entities in it. And usually it has, I think they figure, somewhere around 10,000 varieties of entities in every drop of water. So think about it. Even when they sterilize water and it's completely sterile, as soon as it's exposed to atmosphere or other water or any kind of environment, and perhaps even before that, because there's many entities that can't be killed by simple boiling or evaporation and that kind of thing. They can be going along for that whole ride and probably enjoy it. So there's lots of life in the universe, and depends how we define it as well. But that would be the biggest adventure, really, is interacting with other life forms and being able to communicate in some way, hopefully toward elevating each other and having a common understanding and a common something in common to relate to, like any other comments? Stephen Drysdale says it's 2020 in New Brunswick, Canada. Best wishes and love to all worldwide. Well, that's where I was born, on the east coast of Canada. It's good to know it's there and has passed through into 2020. So far, so good, eh? Now, if the rest of the country can also slide in there without any major issues. Somebody asks, Rick, have you seen rodent coils? Yes, we have built rodent coils and played with them somewhat. They have an interesting magnetic field that they create. Stephen mentions, Rick, what do you suppose could be the case if one device, like something that could boil water with 13.56 frequency, to use water as a clean fuel? Just one device could change a lot. Well, they're still not, I think you're talking about the separation of water into hydrogen and oxygen, the hydroxy process, which can be progressed further by the 13.56, I think it's megahertz frequency, but it still requires energy though to do that separation. And the energy you get back is not more than the energy you have to put in order to separate it. So this has always been the conundrum. But there might be ways of, I know this is getting more and more efficient now, so it might be doable. But then what you have to do is use a fuel cell or some other conversion, possibly an engine, but engines are not necessarily efficient. They still have oil lubricating them, and the oil gets on the cylinder walls and it gets burned along with the HHO and so on and so forth. It still pollutes basically, and it's may or may not be feasible, let's say. There's all that kind of HHO is a very small energy source compared to the nuclear type energy, which is about 1,000,000 times more energy per, like you can run a car for the entire lifetime on 7 grams of thorium, for example. Just 7 grams, tiny little amount of thorium metal can run a car with a nuclear type reactor for the entire lifetime. The car would never need any other fuel. So that's the difference between that and thousands and thousands of gallons of gasoline, or a lot of electricity in order to break down the HHO into hydrogen and oxygen and all that, or storing hydrogen and oxygen, or any other kind of fuel. And possibly we can move forward from that nuclear into the next realm, which could be 1,000,000 or 1,000,000,000 times stronger than that. So we could carry around our entire lifetime energy supply for anything we ever wanted to power in the credit card sized application. Miguel asked a good question. How will peace be enforced? Does it need to be enforced? We, the people of this planet, will be part of the planetary community. It is unavoidable. The question is when. Really good point. That's exactly the way I see it. That's how the peace will be enforced. We have the Bitcoin type technology, and we've got things like contracts and other legal documents more and more going toward the Bitcoin type engagement process, where it's spread out, and you've got security systems built into it, and so on and so forth, so that the ordinary people will become the ones that are calling the shots, basically. In other words, um, we should, we have all this modern technology. Why can't we vote on projects? Why can't we just vote on whether we want something or not, and so on and so forth, according to the latest information, which all should be set down in legal documents that have a justification for the claims made and so on, and not just some politician making huge promises that they can't follow through on, and that sort of thing. And be able to have our governments basically run through the systems that are set up, with the people being able to actually make the decisions and run things, and be more directly involved, the ones that wish to. And the peace can be enforced by this process, so that it's not a top-down process, it's a bottom-up process, just like the nano coating on the copper. It's not a top-down process, it's the environment's created from the top down, but it grows. It's a grassroots, they call it grassroots movements, right? It's the same kind of thing. It grows, grass doesn't grow from the top down, but from the bottom up. And the trees, a similar thing. So this would be a more natural process where the people are able to be the ones that do the enforcement, because the enforcement needs to be at the local level, where people are actually enforcing it by creating a field of peace around them. And if that field, if everyone is in this field of peace and you feel it being disrupted by someone that wants to create a disturbance, you feel that disturbance, and there's a disturbance in the force, Luke. In Star Wars technology. So, theoretically, or at least ideally, it would seem to me that if that field of peace is created over the planet, then those who wish for war are going to they're going to stick out like a sore thumb. They're going to look really silly in that environment, and dangerous, and they will have to be not allowed to continue with that kind of thinking, because it's just not okay anymore. It's time to stop the killing. Jesus, we were supposed to stop the killing in World War II, and it just goes on and on. It's just not acceptable, and if we're ever going to communicate with the universal community, we've got to stop killing our own kind. This is the thing about it, and killing the kind of others as well is it's a foolish man's game, and it's time to stop playing that one. So in the sense that there's other ways that peace will be enforced, as I mentioned earlier. If countries if all the peaceful countries have return to sender technology, meaning that if a rocket comes from another, ICBM or some other missile comes into their zone from some other place, then the technology is able to turn that rocket around and send it directly back to where it came from. And if all of the peaceful countries of the world have that technology, what is going to happen to the non-peaceful countries once they have a few of their own high-tech, multi-headed nuclear bombs delivered directly back into their own vicinity? This will be most embarrassing for the national leaders and their whatever political party they happen to be behind. And more than embarrassing, it will eliminate them as contenders, because no population is going to put up with bombing their own population just to show how powerful they are. That's I don't think that'll be tolerated. If it does, if it is tolerated, it won't last very long, because with the modern technology, it's easy to wipe out an entire country within seconds. So they won't do it more than probably 2 or 3 times with nuclear tip bombs to have return to sender technology. And then it'll be a big learning process, and everybody will have to be forced to get together and declare, well, I guess we will have to get along like common sandbox rules after all. I mean, this is the big thing, isn't it? We didn't, some humans didn't learn the very, very basic sandbox rules of don't hit others. It's, you can play, you can even argue a bit and play around, but once blood is drawn or someone gets bruised deliberately, then it's you're out of the sandbox. Then usually you get, someone starts crying, and then mom comes over or dad comes over, somebody, the babysitter, and pulls that person out of the sandbox, and they get put in a corner for a while to think about what they were doing or whatever. So basic sandbox rules should have been learned when we were kids, and we should have actually been put in sandboxes with other kids and watched very, very carefully by humans to see what our behavior was, and to say, oh, little Johnny there, he's got some really aggressive tendencies, and maybe we should allow him to experience some things through the other members of the sandbox, so that he learns that that behavior doesn't work out in the world as well as he expected it to, let's say. And maybe the expectations of that behavior will improve, and others will continue watching people that are dangerous to others, because we can't, it's a new world out there. It's a new technologies will enable us to have the powers of gods. And this is the thing of the future. We are already comparatively like gods compared to the people of the past. We have access to several hundred horses of power under our right foot at any time that we wish with the new cars that are available. Sometimes some of them have 1,000 horses or 2,000 horses available. And in the old days, if you had 100 horses or even 1,000 horses, was pretty much unheard of. That would be the greatest gods at that time, or the aristocrats that saw themselves as gods would be that way because they could afford to have 100 horses and all the care and management that it takes to raise 100 horses and have them available and have them in good health and so on, or 1,000 horses or 10,000 horses or whatever it takes. But now anyone can go out and have that amount of power available to them in a way, and access it through other ways, through electricity and other things. And we have things at our fingertips that we can generate. We can obtain things and have it delivered to our door virtually almost instantly. So in many ways, we're able to go to the moon and perhaps to other planets very shortly. And we have some amazing abilities as humans, and it's going exponentially. That's the whole thing about it. So next year we could all have the equivalent of 10,000 horses available to us that will completely take care of any possible energy needs that we could possibly want in our lifetime, perhaps all in a credit card sized carryable kind of situation, or maybe you don't have to carry anything at that point. In any case,
next year means this year, right, Rick? Next year means this year. You're talking about this year, right?
No, it's still an hour away from where I am.
Oh, but, you are you're still behind. Sorry.
I'm the last one on the planet to find out about 2020.
uh, another thing I want to bring up a little bit about the enforcement part that you were just discussing. So one of the things about enforcement is increasing our own field strength as we engage our soul. So the stronger the field becomes, even for one person, as Mr. Keshe said, one person can change the whole course. So if there are enough of these high strength fields available, this is the highest technology possible in a way.
Yes.
And as we engage the higher field strength, this percolates through the whole humanity, if not more. And so enforcement, as we elevate, let's say, the soul of some of the leaders that are existing at this point, they will engage in a different way at the emotional and the physical levels, but they may not, since they're not as well connected with their soul, their actions may even be counterintuitive to them in a way and help us achieve the peace and the prosperity that we are talking about right now. So the enforcement, yes, we will have some physical aspect to it. I mean, by necessity, because the higher field strength affect lower field strengths. But the actual implementation is at the highest field strength. And as we learn to engage it, we will be able to use it in our crafts or our reactors and so forth. So our interaction will be mostly at the higher field strength.
Yeah, absolutely true. And thank you for that reminder, because that's really what it's about, is our own elevation to start with. And it's happening on the planet, on a planetary scale, on a solar system scale, and probably the whole galaxy is undergoing a transformation, I think. But at least in this local part of the universe, it seems like there's an elevation going on. So we can learn to go with that energy and go with that flow and elevate ourselves, and then we can direct that and allow that to help others elevate themselves. And it's like little mushroom spores and mushrooms popping up all over the place. And after a while, there's that mycelium network that forms from the mushrooms, and it's all underground and unseen, but it connects. There's some mushrooms that are many, many kilometers through multiple fields. It's all the same mycelium network, and it's all the same mushroom and all the same DNA. It's just one big structure that you don't even see. It's all underground. So that's kind of a interesting analogy there in a way. So, all right. So this seems to be the main game, as you kind of brought up here, Mashfaq, this idea of elevation of humans in order to carry on this kind of work that is available at this time and place, to basically send out the vibes to help elevate others and to bring them into this concept of peace inside of ourselves and reflected outside as well. But it's all an inside job when it comes right down to it, right?
Exactly. And the thing is that, some of the people who are engaged in this kind of wars and various other things, they didn't have any example or precedence to look up to, so to speak. And they were more preoccupied with lowering their field strength. So it's a game of diminishing return. So as you go lower in the field strength. So in that sense, you I mean, no matter what, how much they want it, it's still you are always getting lower in the field strength as you diminish.
Yeah, well,
So you
I
can
gotta
never win, really. Go ahead.
just throw in a quote, or it's not a quote, but I'll just try to um, say what the quote was. It's I just read something a couple of days ago that almost shocked me, but it's not really shocking. I believe it was from Dick Cheney around in the late 1990s, and talking about like he was involved with the U.S. government and so on, and the policies on how they went to war and that kind of thing. And his main policy was, he said, basically, it was, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, we're going for the oil, and any political, um, what was it, political fallout or political, not even fallout, any political considerations were off the table. They had no, they didn't care anything about the politics of anywhere they're going in the world. They just wanted the oil, period. And I just went, oh, really? And well, no wonder things got in such a mess. Holy cow, what a policy is to control oil, and that's the bottom line. And it's all about the bottom line. It's all about the control and money and control and money and bottom line. And there's just no consideration for anything about nations, about culture, about life and death, or whether anybody's inconvenienced, killed, or anything else. Right off the table. Just go for the oil, period. And whoa, what a downslide attitude to have. It's bound to hit rock bottom eventually, and I think that's what's happened now. They've hit bedrock finally, and they come up against something solid, and not gonna it's not gonna fly anymore. Literally, literally, with electric planes that are coming in, they'll take over the whole aviation industry within probably 2 to 5 years. Um, Oil's on its downslide. It's good for lubrication, so it can slide to the bottom and let it be there. So anyway, I've got a
The
thing about
problem is that there is so
I've got
much
a
desert dust. The
so
problem
much.
is that there is so much desert dust. The oil has turned into a quagmire.
Yeah, right. It's quicksand instead. Yeah. Well, don't worry. They're gonna take the CO2 and bury it somewhere. So
Yes.
I heard they're gonna try to bury flue gases now because it has CO2 in it. It's good to bury CO2. So let's take the flue gases out of coal burning things that are most toxic stuff in the world and inject it into the body of the earth. Bet you'll love that. And she's supposed to give methane in return. Oh yeah, right. Sounds like a really good idea. Holy cow, we're funny as humans in the plans we have for. I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful with humans, but sometimes I got to shake my head and go, really? There's engineers that conceived and actually want to build it. And they probably will get the funding because they are associated with some large organization. Holy cow. But there's much grounds for optimism. There's so many peace organizations happening now, thousands and thousands all over the world. And we have a strong push for peace with the Native and Aboriginal and original peoples groups around the world as well. I think that's one of the most encouraging signs. Um, they're finding their voice literally through refining their languages. And it turns out the language is very important for the very factor that we were just talking about, the elevation of humankind, because most, if not all, of the native languages already incorporate the idea of entityness, of spiritness of things, that your ancestors can be here in the room with you, and you can actually, there's ways of communicating and honoring that presence. And it's not a memory, it's not a, oh, I remember my grandparents or my great great grandparents. It's the spirit of my great grandfather is here with me now, and I feel it. And this is the kind of difference between what their language describes and what our modern language describes. We might say, oh, I have a memory of my grandfather. And they might say in their language, the presence of my grandfather is here with me now. And that's a totally different one. That one is a mental construct, the one of, I have a memory of my grandfather, or my grandfather's characteristics. I have some of his characteristics or something. But to actually consider the idea that other entities might be here present, it takes it to a whole different level. And that's the level that the colonists wanted to eliminate in the native populations, and took away their languages as the first thing they do. Takes away their power to communicate with the land and communicate with their spirit ancestors. And that is a real shame. That is a real travesty. That's a cutting off someone's spiritual roots is probably one of the nastier, to deliberately do that is probably one of the nastier things to do in life, I think. So those people need to reconcile not those people, but we as humans need to reconcile this colonialist mentality, and it's becoming shown up now. It's becoming the light is on that, and people are becoming aware of what that means, the colonialist mentality, and how that has influenced things in the past, and how it's no longer socially acceptable to be in that, to be a nation that is basically a slave keeping nation, because of that colonialist mentality.
The colonials are little, I mean, they're more of a slow learner, because as we are seeing now, I mean, all these old cultures or ancient traditions are, people are starting to appreciate them more for what they are. And this appreciation, I think, is global now. And this is an important, this is part of this evolution towards peace that we are seeing right now, because there is really a strong in Native American or even Australian Aborigines. All of these cultures are being appreciated for the things, the wisdom that they have, and their abilities to hold these wisdom in spite of all the sufferings they have gone through, their diligence in maintaining this knowledge. So, and this what do you call it, this capacity that these native people had, and still do, are becoming more of an asset that we are now taking advantage of it. It's part of common knowledge, or the common stock of knowledge of humanity, that, and which is in a sense helping us to appreciate, as you were mentioning, the spirit world, or the world of nonlinear time and space. So all these advanced knowledge are part of the tradition couched in a term of their time. But as we understand more, uh, even the colonials are converting. It's a very different kind of conversion this time, but it's conversion nevertheless.
Yeah. How do you see that?
The conversion in the sense that, I mean, I'll take a very simple example of yoga. I mean, people do yoga everywhere now, and people do know that it does have a beneficial influence, and it's common knowledge in everybody that there are things you can do to your mind which makes your life simpler or easier or happier, things like that. And the I mean, often you see some of these vestiges of old things, like in TV. You have these plays or TV shows where you see fighting or gossiping and things like that. Is still what is popularly termed as dramatic movies or TV shows. But at the same time, this other aspect, which is of the old culture of the ancient knowledge, is seeping through. I mean, if doing yoga is the introduction to this world for some people, why not? They can start there. I mean, many young people who have been exposed to this sort of warlike video games, and now they're doing, let's say, a little older. Let's say they're doing yoga, and some of them are quite young these days that are doing yoga. But we all have to start at some point, and wherever we start, the stronger field, if as we develop stronger fields, they will accelerate very rapidly. And the thing is that we have to just the thing that is really important is to switch from going to the towards the lower strength field to higher strength field. We can easily do the switch, and as soon as we switch from increasing our field strength, then we can accelerate rather quickly. And that's the big change I see globally, and which is very encouraging and hopeful, in my opinion. Even in the very little kids, I can see these things happening now, in spite of all the baggages and the educational system and various other things that has been put on them. They are in a way rebelling, but in a very constructive and positive way.
Yes, I saw a video. I'll try to find the link a couple of days ago. It was two children, two girls, and they're like on a beach or whatever. And the video was about their telepathic communication, and it had subtitles. So you would hear the voice, or you would see the voice written on the screen, but it was a silent video. There was no lips moving or anything. They were just looking at each other and looking out, and you would hear their thoughts, and they'd have some expressions, subtle expressions, but they were talking about the planet Earth and coming to Earth and how crazy it was on Earth. And one of them had taken a trip to Earth, was the thing. And they were talking, you went to Earth? And what was it like there? I hear it's a really crazy kind of place and so on. And how going to Earth is tricky because you become identified with the things going on there and you forget who you are and all of this. And they talk about this, but their lips aren't moving. It's a telepathic communication. And it's only a few minutes long, but it's a beautiful, beautiful video that kind of exemplifies the power of the children of today. They already have these powers, are coming out, and they're able to use them as youngsters. So I think we're going to see that more and more in the new era. As Jedi says, happy new era. I try to find that link. Just bear with me a minute. Somebody else can fill in if they like. Anybody else want to go ahead with some topic or idea, device you want to show, something else on your mind? Why are you here? Why are you here today on probably early morning 2020? And why aren't you home with your families? Or whatever you're supposed to do on New Year's Day. Home with a hangover for some people, I suppose, or that's less in favor these days. Maybe not. I'm having a tough time finding that one. No, I'm not sure where I even found it, actually. Maybe I can go in my history. Okay, any other topics, questions, comments? Well, we might have a short show today. We don't have any input. Ah, that's it. Oops. Okay. I think this is it.
Let's talk about how to communicate with dolphins. Somebody brought it up.
With golf or dolphins, did you say?
Dolphins.
Dolphins.
Yeah.
Who brought that up?
I don't know. I just forgot it.
Well, it's interesting you say that because it triggers in me my big wish back in grade 6 to become a marine biologist for that very reason, because there were I remember reading about a doctor called John Lilly who was doing experiments with dolphins back in the 1960s, I believe it was, in mid 60s. And he was communicating with dolphins, and he would be able to, get them to respond and do things and so on and so forth. And of course, the U.S. military and Navy were really interested in that work, and they may have sponsored it or something. Maybe it was a government program, I'm not sure. And of course, they wanted the dolphins to do all kinds of tricks, such as taking landmines and planting them on ships, and doing other defense and offense work, which they actually got them to do. But John Lilly was not happy with that arrangement, and he actually let the trained dolphins go, open the pen, and let them go out into the ocean, apparently. And I think he lost his job shortly after that, which kind of makes sense. And but he was involved in all kinds of other work during his lifetime that was the result of that dolphin communication. And he went on to basically start the flotation tank or isolation tank business as well. And they still have, his wife, I believe, is still carrying on with the flotation tank business. There's dozens and dozens of other competitors now that make these flotation tanks. What they call flotation tanks, maybe I should specify what that is, or isolation tank, sometimes called, which is a tank you get into that's full of, well, not full, but there's water, a certain depth in the tank. You can lie down in it, and your arms can float because it's full of Epsom salt, magnesium sulfate, which salt water makes you float easier. So you put lots and lots of magnesium sulfate in, and you can float in a small amount of water, and you feel like you're in zero gravity, kind of, because you're not touching anything. And usually it's in a dark space where there's no light as well. And you may or may not have some music or other audio input. Often there'll be no audio as well. So it's an isolation of the senses chamber. And then when you're in a situation like that where you no longer have the sensory input, you have no, the sounds are cut off because there's, it's this insulated, sound insulated chamber. So there's no sounds, no touch sensations. It's lukewarm water. You can't even really discern where your skin and where the water is. And there's nothing touching your skin. So you're free fall there. And of course, you wouldn't be smelling other than maybe some salt smell, or Epsom salts doesn't even really have a salt smell that way. And so you're basically without your senses. And what happens then, you turn inward, and usually the mind starts manufacturing scenarios, and manufactures images or complete tactile hallucinations. And that's what you get to work with, is your hallucinations in that situation, where you get to find out who you really are, and if you can retain that identity amidst all the craziness of the mind manufacturing its own stuff. It's basically a meditative kind of space, and that's what many people try to do with meditation, is to get away from the senses, and you get in touch with your inner being and whatnot. And by taking the senses away, it's kind of a more forced way to force you to confront or deal with that situation. Most of us don't like to be without our senses, but if you go into it deliberately to experience that, then it can be a way of remarkable transformation for many people. They really get in touch with who they really are, and that can be a rather shocking in a certain sense, but at least enough to shock one out of one's sleep of existence and into realizing the reality of the situation. Jedi mentions allowing silence. Yes, right. Allowing silence. we generally don't allow silence in our lives because it's too shocking for us. If you're in a group situation and everybody's talking and suddenly there's a moment of silence, it's someone will right away try to jump in with something to fill it in because it seems awkward, it seems unusual. And certainly in our cities nowadays, it would be unusual to have a moment of silence anywhere. And even in the country, same thing, you don't get silence normally because when you really start to pay attention, there's all kinds of birds and wind sounds, and the trees are rustling, and the various things are coming and going, and maybe there's airplanes and other stuff anyways. And then even when we put on earplugs, then they're still dealing with sounds in a way. So to allow silence in one's life is quite a thing.
Hello.
Hi, Jetta.
Yes, silence is the key to listening. And as we saw that we have these 60 senses working all at the same time. They all produce sounds or data, information. And so to switch off this kind of sensory machine we are, sensorial machine, it's quite, well, it's difficult to start with. But these devices, we saw this idea in altered states in the movie, these tanks where you are floating. These allow, let's say, sensory deprivation, something like cutting off all the perceptions one by one. Of course, we are dealing with the physicality. So most of the time, a tank, it would stop, let's say, the physical ones. But then you expressed the idea of hallucinations, well, this concept. These are not really hallucinations. Let's say that you would start to receive echoes of what is already within your memories. So a stream of consciousness formed by flows and fields that are still moving within the mind of the person that is practicing this kind of exercise. So to slow down and to reach really silence, we should find ourselves within a meditation state, vibrating at 4 to 8 hertz, and really calming down every function. There are 2 different ways, and so I put the link in the chat, to meditate in the ancient teachings within yoga. And these fundamental ways, one is called shamatha and the other one is called vipassana. One is accelerating. Let's say the easiest way to express this concept, it's a brainstorming vision that is taking place. And so within silence, you are receiving the entire universe, because as you are not producing any wave, you are ready to receive. If there is absolute silence, so it's zero point, then you shall reach. And it is only according to the position of your conscience, which is the thinnest body of all, but it is not the thinnest, in fact. It is just a step before the soul itself. So conscience is the body of the soul, let's say, within the bubble. Then you have this first one is allowing mind to go, to see, to reach. And the other one is stopping everything. And so stillness. That is a very good exercise. It takes time, but it cures and enables harmonical and functions that are curing, healing. We used to sleep for a few days. There were no medicines, and you just have to rest, and then the body is going to cure itself. You need darkness, silence, and so the body knows how to do it. Fasting, so just stop all, well, partly functions that are usually active ones, and then you have a cure taking place. This is the ancient way. So on the web page, I wrote the two definitions, so you have the explanation, and then you can find out by yourself and try to practice. That is a way to deal with positions. Then we have many different kinds of meditation, let's say. But well, there are slightly different, but these two directions are fundamentally the first kind of directions you would need to face, either to stop or to move or to accelerate. Where intention should be present when you move, and so a conscious attitude, or in the other way, the other path, intention should not even be present, because listening is not taking a part into this kind of vision, because you would project something. And this is the problem with possible projections. They do not belong to the multiversal kind of vision that is coming. They come from the universal I am producing this, or my culture is producing this. So most of the time we see the same kind of images, ideas taking place. But these are only projections within a very low level, where our body, the physical body, is allowing the subtle bodies to move around. And so you would enter straight away the astral level. And in the astral plane, you find, first of all, you have a problem with desires. What you project is what you want, what you desire. And so you find there are thousands of beings, sentient beings, creations, which are projections. Let's say the ghosts of our needs or what you want. And that is another level, another kind of reality that is taking place most of the time around us and within us, but we do not consider this reality. Maybe it sounds a little abstract, but when we do things, we are following that kind of projection, that desire. So the field is reaching before we follow it. That is quite an interesting way to consider vectors, because whenever something is pulling, you shall follow it without even knowing. But you formulate this kind of vector a long time before you're going to follow it. So you forget. And so you say one day, I want to reach this, I want to have, I want to own, I want to possess. And then you shall find yourself after maybe 2 years right there, but you forgot this kind of little exercise. It is a tricky one. Into magic, people practice it, but we do this with algorithms and equations in finance and in money, in commerce. We project and then we follow, or we force other people to follow. So this is the advertisement job, or opinion makers, or all of these peoples are in fact working upon the or within the subtle field of the astral plane. And so meditation allows to understand, to see, to find out, and then to, let's say, go beyond, because that is only the, let's say, the second skin you have. That is only the second one. So then you shall find other kinds of dimensions once you, let's say, reorganize what you are, in fact. And so identity changes according to reflection, because we still need some sort of mirror here to see our body. And so within desire, we still need someone else to confirm that we are reaching that kind of desire, object or living being. Then after the second plane, you do not need this. This is not required anymore, because it is taking place within your conscience. So that is when the sandbox, there is no violence anymore, because conscience is there. And so it is presence. That is presence, and it is the third level, third plane. But to reach that one, that plane, you have to, well, be able to fly, at least to fly, to go through, to understand, to perceive what is taking place within a partial understanding that we have because of laws that are applied to a physicality, to a matter state. So this slows down the process, but at the same time it allows. So it's just by reaching a perfect equilibrium within offering, giving, serving, and receiving, and then the let's say the flow, the circulation is a perfect one. And so it works. It's respecting nature. It is not destroying. It is not killing. It is not affecting in a wasteful way. This kind of process, it was called Dharma. Now within yoga, we practice, but we practice the physicality. Most of it nowadays is the physicality of it. And so it would help our physical body, but there is no intention, and presence within the higher level. So that would be Raja Yoga. It's the crown, but not many people follow this because it requires action within your subtle body, within your desires, control of the desire in any kind of possible way. So it's you stop eating meat, for example, so you become a vegetarian, or you stop producing negative thoughts. You start converting your negative thoughts in a positive exercise and giving solutions and sharing them. You don't follow your desire, but you try to balance what you find around you. So it's saying, giving an answer to thousands of different desires and allowing them to find a position where they don't harm anymore, they don't create a mess. It's just caressing reality. This one is called reality. That one in the first subtle field, let's say in the astral and beyond the astral, then you shall find tality. Whilst the astral field is filled up with these desires, and they have various shapes, and as they are sentient, you shall find ghosts there. You shall find a lot of entities, people, animals, and you shall see them, and they still exist in a subtle form, and it is the impression of the physical body they had, and they are losing that kind of, let's say, fingerprint, and they are moving on. But for a period of time, this is going to follow. It is the shadow, a shadow of the body. And desires are in fact seen as dark shadows from the other part, because whilst they are living within the light, and desires are condensations of matter projected towards the light, then they would see our desires as a black shadow. And this happens when you take a look and you are present. So we find these jinn or spirits everywhere, in every kind of culture. You shall find they're called in different ways. You might say they are bad ones. Well, according to the intent, to the projection of the man, of the being, it depends on what he wants to do, what he wants to reach, and how. So bad and good, that is the definition of course, a position. You understand. If understanding is there, then they would immediately change their attitude. But it is because of ignorance that they find themselves stuck in that dimension. And so it is, let's say, it's still stopping the spiritual from flying, because it is still attached. So the ghost is not free to go because he has still something to do here. It's a kind of not incarnation, but it could become infestation when plenty of people desire something at the same time, and this then becomes egregore. So that is a dangerous path where going wrong doesn't make things true, And everyone that is going in the wrong direction, well, they will create problems, not only to themselves, but to the entire world. So taking care of this kind of practicing yoga and considering 8 different paths that you find in yoga, so 8 paths, and Raja, which allows this understanding. And here there is a lot to say, but 2 books, if you want a physicality, and the physical one is called Hatha Pradipika. That is within the physicality, all the exercise and the asana. And then Patanjali, of course, and the aphorisms. And you can read them metaphysical, let's say, call it metaphysics. But it is not, in fact, metaphysics. It's giving answers and explanations. And it is a tiny book. But here you find the seeds, yoga, the seeds are there. And it is a useful book to read, to find out, to receive something, and then to be able to share, to see, to go beyond this kind of limitation. So within the silence, internal silence, we create this kind of healing and a different perception. Okay, that's dealing with this idea.
So perhaps in that silence is closer to our native or original source, where we come from. Some say our true nature is the voidness of the void. That seems like a place of stillness and silence. But of course, that's where everything comes from. So there's lots of action around that point. Several more people coming in here as the day continues, and we're mostly into 2020 by now, but I'm one of the holdouts on the very, very west coast of the westest part other than Hawaii. Hello? Say again?
10 minutes away from the...
Yes, that's right. Still got another 9 minutes and counting.
9 minutes. So we have to, when you do, you have to say Happy New Year you're the last person in that way.
Yeah, other than, I think Hawaii might be the last. Hawaii. But I'm the last on the continent of North America, basically, yeah. Last and proud of it. Well, it's interesting. I mean, we talk about the transition into 2020 and everyone celebrates. I mean, all over the world, there's these fireworks demonstrations from every major city, basically, other than Australia, which I don't think they're allowing it because of the fires they have there and so on. It's so dry. And a lot of places they're stopping the fireworks because it scares the animals. They now have silent fireworks. Get that. Speaking of silence, it'd truly be a silent night, but still full of light. But so we have these people all around the world celebrating. And my point was, how could it be that someone else has already, 12 hours before or 9 hours before or whatever, has already completely celebrated this incredible event as a, right down to the second. 3, 2, 1, yay! All the whistles and toots go off and so on. So at every time zone, people are doing this countdown as if it's really important, this few seconds before that transition. But it's really a really a made up ritual in many ways, because um, it's sort of to the planet's point of view, there's not time zones where, okay, now I'm at 12 o'clock, now I'm at 11 o'clock. It's all a gradual, the time is on a different scale for the planet point of view. It's not worried about each individual hour. It's just a gradual transition as it turns and is exposed to the sun and to the revolutions around the sun and all that. It's not exactly notating the hour by hour, play by play action. Arno, did you want to go ahead there? I see you have your hand up.
Hello, everyone. I want to wish everybody a good new year. And I want to show some pictures, if it's okay. So some persons who are still lost in Gens maybe get more insights. So, because last week there was I did not do it. And the last two teachings there was talked a lot about it. Is that okay, Rick?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Here it comes. I need to start video because I have the computer on with the picture.
Okay, let me do something here. Maybe if I stop the share, it'll help. And I think I have to allow video or something here. There we go.
Hello, everyone. I want to turn.
Okay, I see you there. Let me get you spotlighted and all that.
How do I turn the picture? Because normally I can turn the picture.
We can see you right now. Yeah.
Yeah. Normally I see a picture and that I can change. Ah, yeah, I found him. Like this is an imaging of the Oort cloud, and in my perspective, it's the same as the atom's column barrier, and that I show this because this is also happening in. Wait, I go into. I need to go to this one.
Yeah, I don't like to show copyrighted images.
Because you said last time it was okay if they were from public platforms.
Oh, okay. They are from?
Yeah, I download them from public platforms. They were shared with the public.
Oh, okay.
But if you doubt it, then I stop. Then I.
No. That's good. I just didn't know. So go ahead, Arno. It's good.
Okay.
Thank you.
It is just to create a little more imaging for understanding, and I have told this one, but this one is for the layers, how the layers are going, because the energy is going that way, that direction here, because we have this layer so like this, and then the matter state is pulled in again, and I don't know why it does not want to show what I want to show in the direction, because I have a direction. I take this one. With this one I can explain very easy. Like we have the fields to attract this one, eh? This is like a carbon, and the vibration of the fields from the nanoplates, they will weaken this barrier, and then you are left more like this entity. And because you have a carbon and you take a CO2 or a CEO, this one is open, and then you can take more. If they can collide like universes. I don't have that on this one. That was not a free page what I could find, and it's like wait. One moment, maybe I can. Yeah, I can find it here. I will share screen again. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit rusty because I just woke up, but I promised to show. Otherwise, so like this. Like this is like if one is like horizontal and the other is vertical, because the one is bigger than the other is smaller, then it gives to the smaller. But the bigger will collect the matter state back from the smaller and become part of the new space belt. And then when it's activated, the new space belt, you have the story what I told before. And then the proton entity inside, what was that? What was towards that entity becomes the taker, and because it takes, it will change position to this magnetical. So this is how entities from outside can become parts from a bigger entity. And that is what happens with GANs. See, it is like it's more like that we wait, sorry. Next, over 2 weeks, I have a great camera. I've given myself a present for this, to do it what was more better. Where that was the one I want to find. Like this is to the Kuiper belts. And because it's not contained in its womb, because when it's like this, it's within its own womb. You see, then here is the Kuiper belt. Here, around 55 AU, it stops somewhere here. You see the difference? And so this will create also the density, because all this are also correlating to the gravitational points and starts creating souls around it. And that is pushing inwards. And that is why our bigger atoms are often smaller in the GANs world. And I hope this helps some people to understand how GANs manifested itself.
Okay, I have to interrupt your broadcast there, Arno, and announce that it's 2020 on the west coast of Canada.
Happy New Year!
Happy New Year, everyone, and planet Earth. We've made it thus far. So far, so good.
Happy New Year.
So
Happy New Year.
I'm amazed personally that I've lived to exist to this point, and I never, I thought we'd never make it past the year 2000 to start with, because everything was supposed to collapse back then. All the computers were supposed to stop, and it was like the end of the world and everything else. But no, in fact, hardly any of the computers stopped, and it was all kind of an easy thing to get through, an easy transition. But to think back then to 2020, and that just is so far in the future and will be so far ahead in our technologies and so on. We are quite a bit more ahead, but on the other hand, we're still relying on much of the same old, same old. It's a gradual process, but we definitely see progress. So I'm excited for this year. It's got a certain vibe to it. I really like saying the word 2020. It's got a way better vibe to it than 2019, which is 19 is like still in the teenagers, right? Now we're 20. It's, oh, wow. Next year we get to be 21. Well, that's when you get to have more rights and more freedoms and everything else, you could say. Well, okay, here we are in 2020. So is anything different? We carry on. Okay, Arno, is there anything else you wanted to say with your presentation there? Is there any questions for Arno or comments about that?
Yeah, I want to say I wish that I hope that the people who are asking about it they need numbers. Just look to our pictures, and that's on NASA. That is, I think, not supposed to be shared. That is, you see the distance of the Kuiper belt, of the Oort cloud, of the heliosphere, and then you see that the heliosphere is pulled in to the Kuiper belt. So the solar system is the same as the atom in operation.
Yeah.
And it's nice for people who are still a little bit afraid to search for 100% on their soul because they need some confirmation. Then you can search that kind of things and you can get there your calculation systems from. I'm not good in that, so that's not my part. So I just wanted to share this because a lot of people are still lost in, they want scientific explanation of GANs, and actually look to the many pictures of Hubble scope can show you different positions of galaxies, how they merged, how they collide, even equal connection like PMTs, and then you can maybe tune the operation behind it and rely more on to see with your ears and to hear with your eyes. Okay.
Good point. In fact, I just ran into a post. How'd it go? Where did I put that? I'd like to bring up. Just a second, I'll find it here. Yeah, in the news today, I'll put the link into the chat here. This one I should be able to show. It's from phys.org, and they're pretty liberal with their policies, and it's for educational use. So, oops. So I suggest that you should be able to use it. Let's try to. Oh, there we are. Okay, I got it up. Let me open it up because it's right along with what Arno's talking about here. Okay, I'll share the picture. Okay, so this is in today's, well, what's now yesterday, way back in December 31st, 2019. Yesterday, roughly speaking. The title's Giant Magnetic Ropes Seen in Whale Galaxy's Halo, and by the National Science Foundation. Using this radio telescope, a team of astronomers has captured for the first time an image of large-scale coherent magnetic fields in the halo of a faraway spiral galaxy, confirming theoretical modeling of how galaxies generate magnetic fields and potentially increasing knowledge of how galaxies form and evolve. I thought, well, that's pretty stunning that they say this is the first time that they've created this image, and it's quite an image actually. I see it's from the credits from JN English of the University of Manitoba, which is in Canada, actually. So it's a composite image of the galaxy NGC 4631, the whale galaxy, revealing large magnetic structures. And the way this goes is the green lines are showing magnetic lines that are extending off into the universe here. And the green is what is coming toward us magnetically. And the blue is, or purple is what's going away from our viewpoint, our eye point. And one of the things they were mentioning about this structure is seemed very unusual. They thought that the magnetic fields were basically going, being emitted in two different directions, almost 180 degrees. So that's, I thought it was pretty good that this is in the last news of 2019, capturing for the first time an image of these magnetic fields. So they're finally actually admitting that these magnetic fields are pretty important, and it's important to their understanding of how things are formed. It's not all just gravitational like they were thinking for so many decades, the astronomers. So this, they mentioned, Matthew Benequista mentions, this project is an attempt to measure galactic magnetic fields and learn how they influence the way that interstellar gases are ejected from galaxy disks and contribute to galaxy formation and evolution. So I think that's pretty cool.
Rick, you notice in this picture is 2 point of view. Center of this galaxy, these magnetic fields, it's run away in external, more of internal of our point of view. You allowed to annotate a little bit?
Sure, go ahead. Maybe
Okay.
I can make it a bit bigger. There you go.
Oh, it's okay. You have, for example, more magnetical run away from our point of view. Oh, this is my eye, our eyes. A little bit of gravitational field, but it's gravitational for inside of this galaxy of center. But it's more blue or green. It's for inside, like say. It reaches us in certain point, but it's more magnetical expansion. Is more for outside of universe with a center point of observer. Like I say, this is the telescope. It's us. You notice more from external side.
Sure, that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And
May
there's
I ask
also,
May I ask something? Is there another picture of this galaxy without the magnetic fields? So we can see how it's positioned, because if I look to it,
well, that's what the inner part is,
yes, but is that
grayish glow.
from the sides, or do we see the spiral in the original picture? Because it can be two ways. It could also be the whip inside when you whip the fields open of space. Space has to fill in, creates a new dimension inside that dimension. It could also be that we look to that dimension and we don't see the proton around it. That this is the gravitational point. Because it's like, could be, that's I can show you. I have it here. Look, Rick. Oh, something happens. I'm still here. it's the same, eh?
Just a minute,
The
I
galaxy.
can't see Arno. I have to get you set up here, and I have to replace or stop the sharing and set up the video and stuff here because I can't even get it to come in
It's
right
enough
now.
tapping, double tapping with in the picture of Arno.
We can't see your video now, Arno.
No, I understand because there's chat, but I cannot draw. Oh yeah, maybe here. Oh yeah.
No, well.
No, I cannot draw now at this moment. Something has happened in Zoom. But when you finished, then you say, then I take then I show the camera again with the old work. Then I can show maybe it's the other point because I still cannot draw. I think. No, I don't have a pencil in the
Okay,
room.
well, I'm basically done, I guess, other than.
Do you know what I mean, Rick? If you have the proton, the base, the proton is the base of the entity, and you have your free plasma in the middle, then maybe left of the right part is the tail, and the left part of the imaging is the head, is the north. And then the entity is around it too, but that point we cannot see because that is in other strings. Our perspective still not can proceed that with the machines we have made. Or if we look from the side, and it is a true spiral galaxy, then you see yes, but you have to pull them into the side. Everybody thinks north is feeding south. That is not true. Not in that way. North is feeding south in its orbit. The inner north is giving out to through the whole orbit it's going to connect in its south, and the rest is to the equinox. Only in the crust. In the crust we have different fields. Like you know how I draw the atom, Rick. Everybody starts in the beginning. It's like I have it.
It is like a Van de Graaff belts, magnetic field of Earth when it's received the energy from the sun.
Yes, we received directly two kinds of energy from the sun. There are more kinds, but in energy state too. We received directly the magnetical. That is why we are in the same direction with our polars as the sun, because we are interlocked. And we receive also the radiation and the take from the fields from the sun. There are different rotations, and even if we have different, I shared in the chat yesterday the moon's the level of the water toward the moon, how the moon and the sun are. And then if you look to that, you see when the sun and the moon are in the same place, the water is the lowest in that kind moment. And the water is the highest when the moon is on the other side of the planet. So you see that water takes distance from the gravitational points according to its own space and motion to its environment as entities as water. So water is an element and not a compound. We see it as a compound, but I think there we have to still fine-tune the knowledge of man. And then we understand.
It's like a similar with your picture, your drawing. It's the same thing with two fields here, like an observer, our point of view, and center of this galaxy is like a sun, moon, and
but
Earth.
Maybe this whole galaxy is the center of a bigger entity. And then you are in the thorax. Like in your free plasma, you open up the space. in there, if you wait long enough, new dimension is born. So the whole galaxy starts over again with the extra step. In every new dimension, the whole galaxy has the conditions from the totality, but we'll go one step further in evolution. That is how we have evolved ourselves to what we are now. Partly to the wish of the soul, partly to the conditions from the environment. Because when the wish of the soul is there, we change the environment. Hello?
Yep.
May I take this picture and work with it, Rick, for next week? Or is this protected?
I don't really know for sure. It came off of the phys.org site, which is what it's on. That's what I'm using it. I would not use it separately. No, you don't have permission to use it separately.
Okay,
I don't
then I
know if
won't
it's,
do it.
I don't
Otherwise,
know.
I can
You'll have
draw
to
it.
look it up.
I
Look
can
it up
draw it
first.
on my own way. I already have those drawings because you know how much I have drawn to come close to the understanding.
Mhm.
Okay, I stop and thank you all. All have a beautiful year. I stay online and I be out some moments because I have to walk with the dogs. I overslept myself.
Okay, thanks, Arno.
You're welcome.
Alrighty, anyone else have something they'd like to share? I guess not.
Yes, I just data mined the images and I found out that the center of the whale galaxy is in fact red. It's, let's say, hotter, kind of orange color. And the borders are bluish. And then we see, by changing the image to a negative image, we see that there is a flow running all around the structure of the galaxy. So something is disrupting the gravity and magnetism, causing this flow. So there is a tidal wave. And so there is at least a couple of images that show this kind of behavior. So this is on the first 50 images. You shall find it within a normal, well, Google or Bing or whatever. So even if these are protected images, this kind of studies for educational purpose anyway, we can see this. So the field is all around it. So it is still holding, and the center is, let's say, hotter in some way. And the outskirts, so all the border is bluish.
Is this wave interruption is for arm of galaxy, like a spiral of Mr. Keshe. Between the arms of galaxy, you have this fluctuation of distribution of fields.
Yes. But we read a flow. There is a zone around, let's say, all the whale galaxy that apparently it looks empty, but in the negative image, you see there is this kind of stream, a flow field from our position, probably we see it.
What is invisible for us, it's this middle layer, like a skin, between magnetical and gravitational through the matter and I don't like saying not matter, dark matter or whatever, this empty for us, but I know it's not empty, but create this middle layer, like Mr. Keshe say, 1G or carbon.
I imagine there are ways to see even this dark matter and the other fields, because they still vibrate. So by emitting, producing waves, then going through a particular cloud or matter or sensing them within a specific range, you would see them. So it's just tuning to the right frequency. In fact, they are working. Probably the right atoms. So it's looking for the fingerprint, and then you see the image. Here they have tried to create a model of the magnetic field, and then they let's say placed it on top of the normal image to show. But we have other ways to see, plenty of different ways.
Here's the what you call the normal image, I guess.
Yes, the optical. Normal. So you have this central zone that is reddish, that's brown, and then it's going cooler down. It's and all around it, you don't see a lot of stars. It's some sort of a container.
You can see even with the so-called ordinary picture, there's almost like filaments, dark filaments you can see shooting off from the edges of the galaxy that would probably correspond to the magnetic fields that they showed in the other picture, which I can go back to so we can reference it.
Well, that is iron dust on paper. Or if you put a magnet, you see these lines.
It looks like that, yeah. And these are taken from the data that they got from the radio telescopes. So it's there may be other magnetic fields that extend out from there, but perhaps they didn't have the particles that were showing up, or however, whatever means they were trying to get the data from the radio telescope.
And that's why I was saying that if we invert the image, we would probably see more of them. Here we see the interference pattern, and so it shows like a kind of airy thing all around it, but these lines would continue. So black kind of lines on the black space, and you don't see them anymore. So you have to invert the image and probably see it.
Right on. I see Lawrence had his hand up. Do you want to go ahead?
Hello. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you all.
Yes, same to you.
I found something which I think we should put on to the project list, which is related to this topic you're talking about. The 121st Knowledge Seekers Workshop from July 2016. From the 38-minute mark on, Mr. Keshe explains about the empty box of the universe, the scaffolding of on how to create, this dome and how to create the free plasma.
The spherical box of universe?
Yes. I want to add this to the project list because ultimately, where this whole teaching goes into the direction, in my opinion, or in my understanding, is that we create the free plasma, which is basically another soul. And with the interaction of our own soul with that other free plasma, we can create stuff. I mean, like universes, or manifest different materials, or whatever we wish. We can even create a spaceship. And I think ultimately the present next step of understanding and of operating this understanding is to recreate this process of creation, where you have the universal fields, and in interaction of our own soul with those universal fields, we can create anything, whatever we wish, whatever we think of, whatever we are bound to be or bound to create, just like, you know, the creator was the present universe in existence. We basically speed up the process because we are becoming stars after our death, and stars create star systems, you know, planets with life, stuff like this. We could even do it a bit further if we have, you know, that opened up field that can interact with something. And that something is our child, which we create through this understanding of the teachings in the process. So into the, which is the point, 15th?
Yeah, how would you word it? How would you like to put it down?
Well, I would firstly, it's create the empty box of the universe. And interact with the free plasma and create anything, or become creator with the interaction with free plasma. And I would like to put in the 121st Knowledge Seekers Workshop, July 16, 2016. From the 38th minute mark on, about to 20 minutes.
From the 38th to the 58th minute, you mean?
About, I wouldn't say 58, it's more like a little bit more, maybe half an hour, 20 minutes, half an hour, but there a lot of things are being repeated. From firstly, it's referring back to dosages of the ganses for different ailments, and like in the health teachings workshop mentioned earlier, where we had this emotional balancing device, point 12 in this list. And then he goes on to explain about how the universe has a basic line, just like you've been showing these pictures earlier, where you showed the plane of the fields, which he recreates with ganses at the bottom of a container. And then he pours water on top of it to create the liquid plasma as a field container. And then he puts on into this box 2 stacker units, the MAGRAPH stacker units. And the coils are a bit differently aligned. If you watch the video, you will see that the coils are not, they are turned 90 degrees to each other, but to the side, so that you can pull one of these MAGRAPH stacker units, pull it onto a MAGRAPH stacker unit from outside. So basically just like the cup of life, where you had the magnets, the ring magnets, but made out of a MAGRAPH coil. And then he says, you empty the box, you empty the water, and you will have the fields inside. And with the fields, you basically have a free plasma. And if you know how to interact with it, because with the GANs and this whole setup, we've been creating the scaffolding for the free plasma. If we know how to interact with it, soul to soul, wish to soul, then we can do the game of creation. We can even create a starship out of it, or we can create anything out of it. It's we have to open our own fields. This is why we suggested this emotional balancing device, the emotional dialysis machine, so that we extract all the fields from our blood, just like we do the caustic with the metals, the nano coating, so that we open up the blood-brain barrier, so that the fields of our soul can shine more. We have more interaction with the outside. And then as a next step, we need to learn how to apply this knowledge field to field, soul to soul, and how to create the same interaction as we've been explaining or appreciating from the reactors, because the ultimate reactor is free plasma to free plasma. Yeah, so that's what came up when I was listening to Arno and your topic about galaxies and all these magnetic fields and things like that. Thanks for listening again.
Okay, great. Thank you, Lawrence. Any input on what Lawrence said or otherwise?
It's colleague Lawrence. First, complimenting for your picture in Facebook. A lot of pictures, and it's this empty box. It's colleague with I don't know 116 or 200. 2 or 150 when Mr. Keshe talk about the reactor with fields without motion with I don't know it, yes, in one of these workshops when talk about this empty box of universe and collegate the fields one to the other for obtain the motion and materialization and everything else. Thank you.
Okay. I wonder if anyone is considering forming a group with any of these projects to be able to penetrate and follow through on experiments and actually put it into action. Something to think about.
Well, the two I mentioned early on, or 2 or 3, I can be part of them. The one with the creating of the magnet, flashlight, and the magnet, understanding the magnet. 3. Okay. So do you want to put names with these? That idea?
I don't know, it's quite a commitment.
Yeah. So how do you form these groups? I mean, what would be the procedure?
Well, the way I understand it is there's supposed to be, we're supposed to kind of self-form these groups somehow, and I think they're going to be in the either Telegram or Zoom. I think maybe Telegram's going to get used instead of the Zoom to form some groups.
Okay.
So the idea would be to have a topic or some, you know, Mr. Keshe had some examples of some basic things like materials and space and, you know, what did he say? He listed off half a dozen categories, and I asked him, well, were these the categories that, I started to list the categories. Are these the things you wanted, people to follow? And he basically said to make up your, just make it up, make up your own projects and categories, but to set up, do it in a group process, not necessarily like in this group, but in a subgroup, let's say. So if you like the idea of making the self-charging flashlight, in the case of Moshfek, for example, he could be maybe the group leader or someone that could get together that group, and those who are interested in the self-charging flashlight could gather together and pool their ideas and come up with a plan for experiments and different things to test and try, and to try to nail down the technology and make something practical or useful, or pass on some additional knowledge, or somehow advance the teaching with through a group interaction. I mean, technically we could have literally thousands of groups like that, each doing specialized things, and some of them might cross over or not, depending. People could be in multiple groups. Some things may not have a practical example in terms of the physicality, but like number 9 might have exercises for emotion and breath, and some of the results might be non-tangible, or things that are hard to describe, or not something that's a device or something physical that you can put your finger on, but yet it could be one of the more important things to pursue. Anybody have any other ideas for things to add to this list? Perhaps we can start adding names at some point. Maybe it's a bit premature, but I think we need to get a little more advice, maybe from, I'm not sure if the Universal Council or Earth Council. I think they're supposed to get involved with this somehow. I'm not really clear on the procedure.
Rick, as far as I've understood, this should be something that we're doing in the private classes. I'm totally open to do this in parallel with this public group, the Keshe Plasma Reactor group, as we're sitting or listening to right now.
Well, that's a good point. Maybe it is the private classes, yeah, because Mr. Keshe was saying that we set up classes on various, at least bigger categories. I'm not sure if he meant a class for each project or not, or more like a topic or something. But yeah, he did seem to mention that, so maybe that's the correct way to go about it. People need to be.
So I thought of this as an idea starter to easier create those project groups within the private teachings. But in the end, I would like to, for example, with this self-charging flashlight, I would like to see as an output of that project one device that can be replicated, and where the replication process, just like the nanocoating process, is documented in form of a YouTube video, for example, so that kids or anyone else who's interested in the technology can do it at home and learn how to, because it connects very much with the first project, that we understand how to do a proper nano coating, because how do we interact with the nano coating or the fields of the nano coating to get something out? It's in the end a means of teaching and opening up this technology so that concepts or prototypes that have been shown to get our attention will multiply this knowledge to others who are interested and open by their own experience and their own experiments. So the way I think about this whole project list is to get more people involved and more people interested through being practical and applicable and concise and short. And in the end, of course, this whole topic of the empty box of the universe is something which is, high school level or maybe, starting from kindergarten, nano coating, and then going to the higher education part of what we call this all plasma teaching and the understanding of the field and etc. And in the end, we will, or with this project list, we are in some kind creating an educational curriculum where beginners who are just getting in touch with this whole topic and start from the material state, and in the end they are at the level of understanding, what you usually say, the plasma manipulator, plasma creator and manipulator, who are basically one with the universe and understand how these things works and how they themselves work. So we will be structuring, I think, all these topics in a way so that it's a knowledge multiplier. It's hands-on, but in its effect, it attracts and disseminates understanding.
For example, in my place here, us. It's like a not national experiment. It's between the knowledge seekers. For example, for this star formation, everybody start the star formation and put the list how is making nano coating with fire or with caustic. I'm making what salt and how much percentage of salt utilized. How to position this cooler fan motor of these reactors. What in this list, making every condition, and everybody in the home achieve the material preparing this all in same time or in period of time, and after compare the result. In our place, in this manner, we making for everybody knowing how it's made it, for what purpose, what it's made to achieve or see the result. Because when it's a little group, I don't know what Mr. Keshe thinks with this group or how it's made, how it's working. But it's for everybody know the same thing and compare the result or compare to conclusion. I don't know, it's just one of my thoughts.
I totally agree. I think the result of this project-based approach should be that up until now, the Keshe Foundation had different technological development and research centers, but they were shielded from the outside and very well protected. And I think if we knowledge
Sorry,
seekers,
I think you cut out there, Lars, or at least you did for me. The last sentence I couldn't hear.
so to my understanding, do you hear me now?
Yes, clearly.
So we had different research centers in the Keshe Foundation, which were doing their work, which were closely connected with Mr. Keshe. And I think Mr. Keshe would like to validate that his teachings has been properly understood, so that we knowledge seekers who are considered externals, who are not, well, we may be in the private teachings, but we are still not officially formally in the organizational structure. If we open up our beings or the fact that we are involved and that we show to each other that there are people all around the world, in Brazil, in Europe, in Romania, in Germany, etc., and we show that there are people involved and many people involved, we can validate all these understandings by means of doing. I think there's one more point I would like to add, which is also very simple. Drink the liquid plasma and not feel hungry or not feel thirsty. There was also a teaching some time ago, and I think Mr. John Wells, who's not present at the moment, so sorry for mentioning him, but he's I think also one of the people who can attest to drinking liquid plasma water and not feeling hungry or thirsty. So this is also another next step or big step for us if we can replicate this understanding and the practice that's connected with it. You can put on another point: drink liquid plasma water and not feel thirsty, not feel hungry. Feed our body with plasma directly.
Feeding station, because it's not needed only the drinking the plasma water. You are feeding with the fields.
Yes, ultimately it's feeding with the fields. The order of these projects is not in the order of importance or steps of understanding. It's a little bit mixed up, but that doesn't matter. In the end, we will have a proper curriculum.
All right, very good, Lawrence. Thank you.
Rick, a year ago, in the community forum, I wrote quite a few tiny little articles, and there was the list.
Holy cow, I lost your input there, Jedi. Lost your microphone somehow.
Sorry. I wrote down the list of the instruments I was going to ask someone to put together to start searching and finding out. So a list of the instruments that I copied here. A year ago I published. This was the legacy of seekers, I called it. And there are quite a few instruments we should put somewhere in a laboratory and then be able to use them. It should be a standardized kind of facility where you can work with this kind of ganses and fields. So all of this list that I wrote here, I think it's a fundamental one, at least to find out and to deal with from a physical point of view, I'm saying so. And this would allow then a deeper understanding even of different kinds of fields. So that's why I added, for example, a kind of instrument. It's an organic rotor or something like this. I mean, there are still instruments that are able to see, to perceive a field, to react. And so this list, this is a tiny list, of course, but to own all these kind of instruments, it would take, well, a lot of money. You have to spend a lot. So this is, you would require universities or etc. But if we can put all together all this equipment, then it would be a little more, let's say, scientifical, in a way that whilst we are practicing, everything is recorded, everything is under control. No one is making a mess, let's say. It's just, you can repeat it if you want to follow the scientific way you do things. Of course, there is a problem with the singularities, but you shall still see the result and the recording, even if you shall not be allowed to replicate it again because of conditions that are so, let's say, complex to build again in the same way, that this is going to happen only once. It is still proof, but it's going to happen only once. Then the study should be a deep one on how to reach that same manifestation or spot or address. But this list was, I published it a year ago, and unfortunately the community forum is not open. It's a private kind of engine. So only those who belong, in fact, or subscribe, they can read it. And so you would find nothing in going on the community forum. And if you are looking for any kind of information, you would receive just writing your name, Rick, you would find only 3 documents. But in fact, you have probably 500. So you have to belong. So I think there is a little problem with this sharing from the point of view of private, the concept of privacy. If we are sharing, it is open. If it is private, it is closed. There is a key, there is a password. So there is email. Email gives the IP an identification, and so all this is under control.
I already copied your message in chat.
Yes, so thank you.
And you have already in little phone you carry with you, you have a lot of these instruments already.
Yes, I know. We have all of them. We already have them. We are using them, but they are not connected. So this is the problem. We need a kind of, even if you want to make it private or open source instrument where all this data enters, and anyone could read this data and try to understand. This is what happens nowadays. I published the 2, I data mined the NASA files they have, and any kind of galaxy. I wrote two links, and you have all the information you need. Just try to think about a jump. You want to reach it, you go there. You need all the positioning, you need all the stars, you need all the coordinates. You need you need to know this. And so it's already there, it's given, it is shared. So, I mean, these are really scientifical publications, and you have all the numbers, thousands of them. And so you have to ask astrophysicists to come on your starship, of course, to understand and to position yourself. So this is what is happening. We have the data, but all this is not linked, it's not connected because of this kind of private system. If you unite, you integrate, then this is going to be shared and used, not abused, because it is there, you can use it and everyone knows. But if you have the ability, the possibility, the understanding, then you can reach. But if I am not able to find the articles I wrote, I say, what's happening? Because there is a gate, there is a password. So I would rather call it shared teaching and not private, in a sense that I am giving my private information. It has to do with the words we use.
The private teachings
are open ones.
No,
they are open.
No, they aren't open. The private teachings are different than what you're talking about, Jetta. You're talking about the community
yes.
site, correct? That's
yes.
Basically an obsolete site now that Mr. Keshe
yes.
refuses to use. He doesn't want us to be using it, basically. But it's there as a backup in case Facebook or some other community type system breaks down or we get booted out of it, then at least it's there as it's already set up as a backup, and it has its passwords to try to keep all the trolls and others that come in there. Even with the password, it's very difficult to keep trolls out of there. I'm constantly spending time to delete articles and delete the trolls and so on, even though it's basically a dead site. There's plenty of other places that can be used more publicly, but the private teachings are when you become a KFSSI student, pay your $100 a year, then you have access to the private teachings of the Keshe Foundation, which is the various teachers that give teachings within the Zoom platform. They're given a 2 or 3 hour venue to teach about the plasma technology. Carolina has her classes that she gives there, and there's various language groups that have their own private teachings, and there's others that teach about plasma science, or whoever would like to be a teacher and teach the basic Keshe teachings or plasma science teachings can do so, or given that opportunity if they wish to be a teacher. But that's on what we call the private teachings, where it's you have to go through and pass security and the whole thing. It's not open to the public until you become an actual student, and that can take a month or two to come through sometimes as a student.
Yes,
that's a different kind of
well, I was thinking about open source integration of scientists working within the same ethos. So it's just gathering and uniting. There shall be trolls all the time. So there shall be scientists that are going the opposite direction. That's normal. But this openness, I think it would give results whenever we are dealing with topics that are unusual, and the scientist that knows that he could share immediately that knowledge, and this would benefit everyone because we miss it. We have to do it from the start every time, or we haven't got the means, we haven't got the way, the time, the years spent looking for answering. So it's a data mining process that has to take place. And so this requires open source, of course, within the limitation of the net censorship, because things most of the time are classified. So you need to find 1,000 documents, and then you shall see something else coming, rising. So this is kind of conscience within the action, within the research, and even kids can do it, and they go faster than we do. And so they write, it's rapid, and they are intelligent, and in a few minutes they're able to find 1,000 documents. And this makes the difference. And it's all open because you find them, they are there. Then to make good use of them, so we have to probably then meet and this open source or private platform, whatever, and then search in that direction. I found 12 different matters, let's call them matters, within our 4,000 years history: alchemy, religious teachings, etc. There are 12 different times and names we met the Ganses. So, and this is something like just reaching the first three. And this makes probably the difference to know what happened. And we are doing it again and again and again. And probably considering, and because we have this instrument that is an open one, the net is open, although blocked. If you remember, Google gave 1 million pages. You were looking for topic and it said 1 million pages. Well, it still says 1 million pages, but up to page 50 or 75, and then it ends and there is nothing else. So this limitation, it goes to 750, 1,000 documents, that's all. But they have 1 million pages. So what happened to the net is that 99% of the information disappeared. And no one saw this.
It's like a feeding station when Mr. Keshe is saying, I put the knowledge in your head. Every information is inside us. We are connected. You are needed always asking yourself.
Yes.
Right. It's not need for confirmation. No. For example, today, tomorrow, it's collapse. Internet, everybody, every platform. You don't have the technology. It's like a time of wheel. I don't know. No. You have inside. You achieve, and you have all the information inside of you. It's accessing this information, the way, the knowledge, the understanding for accessing this cloud.
Yes, but I was talking in this case about matrix. and about the scientific way you can reach through reading, studying, understanding, and finding out all the topics, anything you want, because it is online. So this is a shared container. As long as you are able to reach the books, the ancient manuscripts, for example. So we have containers, but we should write down the list of all these containers and say, okay, I do not need to go to that bibliothèque there on in the library, etc. You have 2 million publications there. You have all the patents online. You have all, then you use it, then you can use it. And if it is directly within your reach, in your heart, in your soul, in your mind, you're using telepathy, you're welcome, you can do it. If you have to explain someone else, you cannot say, I feel this. You have to write it down, and then you have to act in the way we act here. So it is by sharing understanding that is based upon another understanding, another understanding. That is the building, that is the tower. So you can rise up. But if you are, you want to build something, and the basis, the foundation is not flat. So we all share internet. Okay, let's open it up. Stop this classified nonsense. Every time you're looking for something, then it disappears. If you write it down, the day after, they change Wikipedia. What's happening?
Jedi, I think we should work on the universal fields of creation, and whenever we do something, we should work on the basics. I mean, like when you're talking about all this technology and it's accessible or non-accessible, it's a temporal thing. You know, we had books for a few hundred years. Once we stop cutting trees, we will not have any books because we won't have any paper. Some time in the future, we will just stop using all these computers and devices and the internet, as we call it. And what we are going to be left with is the free magnetic gravitational fields of the universe. So we should learn to access and operate with
Lawrence.
those fields.
At least I am here. Having you.
Okay. You're hearing me now?
You're back again, yep.
So what I wanted to say is that we should learn to operate and work with the fields and understand how these fields create and store everything. Because just as we have an explanation of how the empty box of the universe creates a free plasma, in the end, what we consider our body is also the creator, the scaffolding for a free plasma that on our death, when we, exit, our body becomes part of the creation and part of being. But with all this understanding, we can go back to accessing the understanding and working of free plasma even before we die. We don't have to leave our body in terms of death to be complete and mature beings in the universe. And I think all the understanding that we are working for and working with is to create fields that span through the earth and with the earth, and help all the beings, not only humans, but all the other beings, to become masters of their own understanding and their own, completeness. So whenever we think of we should put something onto the internet, put it onto the internet of the telepathic mind of the universal fields, and then everyone can share without restrictions.
If you think it, it is there. It is within Akashic. So if you think it, it is present. It's not you putting it there. If you think it, it is there. So this is a different kind of net that unites. But here we are talking about the limited one, knowledge, as we think about it. And even if we don't cut trees anymore, the knowledge is there. It's still present. But if we forget what they expressed and what they called in a different way, then we have to do it again. But once you know where the instrument is, you use it. You use a spoon if you want to eat your soup. But if the spoon is there, then it's easy. You want to make it. Every time you have to make this spoon. So at least this is the physical aspect. Even if all knowledge is within a data flow stream running everywhere. So as long as one day we shall reach this kind of electronics and mind matching at the same time, they produce instruments that are able to do it. This is an interaction.
I think we should consider the internet the library of Alexandria. There's a lot of knowledge stored in there. Some can access it, some can access more or less of it, but in the end, it's temporal, it's not eternal. It's not something, it's like the spoon for the body. We should go back to the language of light before the Tower of Babel, when we split our minds into different understandings, different shards of reality, and go back to the language of the soul, because the language of the soul is the language of those universal fields. That's what this whole endeavor is about, that we bring humanity and all other beings that are at this present state back or into, depends on how linear you are, into this understanding and working in harmony with whole creation. It's the knowledge has never been lost. It's not, we are just not open to access and work with this.
Exactly.
How many times, guys, it's when Rick says something or one experiment or one topics, how many times each of us we thinking the same thing, same idea, and you achieve the response of your question instantly or in few minutes, or when Mr. Keshe talking about something, you achieve this response, and you asking how you know Mr. Keshe or Rick or Jalal or somebody else, you thinking in same direction. Every time I for me it's how to say, it's not strange, it's already normally. When I put the one question and somebody else already responds from my question without words. It's like in the cloud.
Well, consider the cells of our body. They form different tissue and they form different organs and they form a body. And whenever you think of something, that whole body as a unit or in unison starts reacting and acting. And I think we, in some respect, have also formed this kind of tissue as being units and ganses and cells as individuals. And like this, we are also part of a whole, if you understand what I mean, then.
Yes, circular line is with wishes is connect in this line. With school of thoughts is connect with I don't know, second line. With water in the physical body, or with direction of thoughts in the soul or in the mind, is create another line. But to this infinity line is connecting and it's in the same direction. It's amplified. It's in micro and macro, in the cell, in body of cell, or in the thoughts or in the soul level, is the same. Create the pattern, the line of communication between us, between our soul, ourselves. Wow, what a silence. This silence is full of thoughts, full of idea.
The
The
word is
whole thing about silence, it's got the full potential in it. Whereas every time we speak, we limit the silence.
it's called psychotronics. That is the link between organic and machine and these data that we are sharing. Here we are playing with instrumental transcommunication, and this is a fact. We use matter to instead of telepathy, but we are reaching in the other kind of fields as well. So both are taking place.
How do you use the matter from the soul out?
You are
You're already using telepathy you move the space around you. That is your body. Your body is the space. You move the space around you to move yourself to the external environment. Because your physical structure is actually your environment. And the environment your physical structure is within, that is the external environment. So actually, you're already using telepathy to move your body. And when you lay down, your body is the base, and your soul is above it. That is why you can leave very easy when you are asleep. It's not only the energy in the blood that change, but because you become the base, you change conditions. That is why the energy of the heart, the phoenix, every beat change. And then the physical structure creates the star formation. Above itself is the free plasma. It lifts itself up. And then you can go where you go in your sleep. But see it like this. If you are walking and you are thinking about something, you are already there, right? So when you walk, you also can leave in the beginning. I learned it because I was... someone was in need of my help, and I did not saw him for years. He was a little brother of mine, and I felt it. And just like Mr. Keshe explains in the teachings, you already know it, because I'm going to sit down, put my hands on my head. And in the teachings, we see it back, that your hands are against, you can feed with your hands to your head. And I could receive him, and I could give him what he needs. And 2 months later, I saw him for the first time again, and he had experienced the same. We were able to help him from a distance, and that is what the teachings gives us too. And telepathy, you always use telepathy to the cells. You already have manifested yourself in your physical structure as cells. And if you don't eat much anymore, like many knowledge seekers, then you also have manifested yourself as the principles to become the entities of the body, like the enzymes and all that kinds of things. If the fields are there to receive, you receive. But you can create the fields inside your physical structure to receive. But you also can go backwards. If you go from the soul, then you receive through the soul and you give it to receive it in your physical structure. So you are on both sides. You are within the soul. So we are all the same. Only you are a different lymph node in the physical, in the structure of the soul of the man than I. That's the only thing. But we are the same soul. Only the conditions have decided how the soul manifested itself. And the conditions also decide how hard they pull on a long term. Why that new dimension has that strings to receive. Because it has so much emptiness, it will take more. And if it have low emptiness, it will take less. So actually we are all one. That is why when we start more collectively acknowledging this part of ourselves, then the knowledge opens up. But it was always there. Only we became too hyperactive. We are the hyperactive children. Huh? Like Earth is giving too much. And we are over-exaggerated, like the sugar also do. That is why we became the way we are. We were that much force, but with that less understanding. And that became a blockage of our evolution between the soul and the physical structure. And now we are free. Everybody is free because the knowledge is there and it will reach everyone. If it's not right to them, it will come to them, to their children. If the children become their teachers, just like monkeys with the cup in the Filipinos in the 80s or 90s. There was an experiment, and even monkeys on other islands had learned the behavior without physical contact from the other apes. So we are all we are all one soul, and our souls, our collective souls, like soul of the man, soul of this, are also again the same soul, because then they are the lymph nodes of their soul structure, and that is how you can reach soul. If you look to the Earth, we have a northern hemisphere and a southern hemisphere. We move north direction, so our lowest field is on the north hemisphere, like our brain has manifested around it. If you put your gifts, what you have received from your soul, in your soul experience to understand. When you receive a key, through learning, through trying to understand, and when you receive the understanding, you can work with what's behind it. And you tune the understanding more, and when you are correct, you get a little soul trip. You go there, you see it, you can feel it, you can experience it. And then you go to the northern hemisphere and let it there, see it again. And everything what is newborn will have received this addition, because you did the same as what you do when you die for the manifester of that dimension. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Arno.
The word is psychokinesis. That is, from our mental point of view, causal. Within matter is called telekinesis. The 60 senses we were talking about, these are our sensors. So we already own the instruments. They are there within our body and conscience. Memory is not located within our brain, only copies of it. It is located outside, and it is in a shape of a time crystal that is resonating. That's why what I think is already somewhere else, because it matches that resonant key. So we know this exists. It was called Akashic Archives. It's all the knowledge is there, is present all the time.
I have a question for you, Jedi.
Yes.
So you say it's outside. So how does one access that knowledge if not by going inside, though? Is that not correct?
Because it is non-local. Outside is inside. Because space is in between, and conscience, it's exactly in the 0 point, it's the center. So you are right there if your conscience is present. The name of the concept, it's transferences. This is what monkeys practiced and what any kind of being practices. Allowing this transferences to take place interlinks. So you belong, you are a part, and there is this understanding taking place. If we go the other way, then we need materiality, instruments and books, and someone to teach us, because we choose not to listen.
Speaking of listening, if you could move the microphone a little bit away
Excuse
from
me.
your mouth, it's
Excuse
just
me.
picking up some extra buzz there.
It's
So
transferences. That's the word, transferences.
transferences. Could you write that in the chat? I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. You got the psychokinesis and telekinesis, which transfers. Okay, well, that's a new one. You get to learn all kinds of new words in this class. Oh, transference. Okay, yeah. So what about the idea, what do we think, Jedi or others, about the idea that we can go literally inside of ourselves to access virtually any information? Like, consider the idea that the hydrogens in our body, which are quite a few considering all the water, the H2O parts of our body and other hydrogens and other structures. Most of these hydrogens, if not all of them, have been created in other star systems other than the sun. And this can be scientifically proven. They can track the hydrogens back by certain signatures and so on. So in effect, each hydrogen, each atom, each proton, each entity in that realm has its own complete dimension with experiences and a recording, essentially, of where it's been, what it's done, and what it is. And it's got a part of the universe contained within it in a holographic kind of way, perhaps. So what I'm proposing is that by going inside, literally deep within to the cellular level, that we can access, or even the atomic level, but let's say to the cellular level, let's take it that way, that these cells that we call our own, but yet, and when you look at the cells, or you look at the atoms of the body, we have atoms that have passed through all of the other, we have atoms inside of ourselves right now that have passed through every single human on this planet and all of the beings that have existed through all of time. It's been scientifically proven that we have 100,000 atoms that existed in the body of Christ, each one of us. So that we have, in effect, these sacred atoms that are, floating around inside of us that have already passed through that being. And so I'm thinking, well, if we can access those, we should be able to access the body of Christ, the Christ consciousness through those atoms, or through perhaps a cellular structure that has been based on cells that have come from other beings, or from the accumulation of atoms that have been from other beings, and so on. So my question, it would be, can we indeed go inside, literally inside, not just inside our mind, or inside or outside to the so-called Akashic records, but inside to where the actual records are embedded in those very tiny wee structures that, as Nazarene Harriman, whatever his name is, has said, each atom, each proton is like an entire world that contains as much information as our entire universe does. Right now, our external universe is actually a mini universe inside of each atom. They're each unique. They have a particular positioning and orientation and connections to an entire universe inside this atom. Imagine if we can access that information, we would have access to the knowledge of the universe through the atom. So that's why I'm kind of throwing out there. What do you think of that as a concept?
Rick, if you have all the atoms around everywhere from the prophets where you talk about, then every atom carries the essence too, because they are there in the conditions to create a new one. Mm-hmm. So that is where you receive your key. You go inside yourself to work with the knowledge. When you go into the knowledge, you go already to that part of yourself. And when you receive that knowledge, then you receive the connection with that soul. You are that reactor. If I put something from you in that reactor in the beginning of knowledge seekers, I could link up with you, remember? And you are that reactor. So you carry everything. Only when you engage on the knowledge and you start working with it, then the comprehension become you receive the connection with the soul who delivered that part of the knowledge, of the physical soul, who was there, the experiencer. And so it's like the amino acid connection. So in every entity of your existence, you carry all connections to every being that has been around and is around. And actually within the soul within there, you carry all the to come.
And not to mention the beings that are off planet as well, because we know that spores, viruses, bacteria, and certain other entities, and even cockroaches can exist in space.
Yes.
And the dust is always coming. We got meteorites coming in, different stuff. So we're always getting additional extraterrestrial bits and pieces coming in that would, if we can indeed focus our attention to the point of being able to access that knowledge inside the cells, in fact beyond the cells, perhaps into the atoms of our bodies.
In the physical, you go to the keys to work with that part of, and then if you are inside, you can go there. But you're actually going outside there, because you create that newer dimension, that newer lowest field, because you did go in. And then you open up in the center, your thorax opens up, so you create more motion in your external environment. And then you can go there. You can link up with every entity if you have received that entity through your essence from your physicality. I see it like this, Rick. A principal ray can become the virus. And if it has received in the physical structure by one of the cell blasts in certain organs, and even can become a wrong enzyme or wrong bacterial, because that virus has received the physical level. If then it becomes a bacteria, because inside the soul, actually on the wrong place, is a virus. And a physical, if you remember the node above the base, you create the soul of totality, and then it starts radiating its principal matter. And that those principal matters, if those two interact by two different densities, what can be received also with heat and cold or with the pump. If you pump like the GANs, you get new material, because the GANs is also like the ray. And when you pump, you get two different strings in one stream. So you have one giver and a one more giver, or you have a one taker and a one more taker. Because if one gives and one takes, they will not match up. Remember the drawings I sent time ago with that I nano-coated from the radiation of the motion of the space from the donut reactor. And then you see that the one is what less dense, but it already has go to a more open space by the motion of the fields, because space was opened up, and the other one was more opened up because it was going right through it. And when those two were in they were opened up, and then they're closing in. So because they're closing in, they have to take to survive. They try to survive because they're losing grip, and then they take each other's hands, and because they take, they also have to give. And then they give to each other, and then they link up to become that new proton, but actually in soul state. And that is every soul. Only the conditions of when they opened up their collective soul, the lowest dimension, all the space gives its essence to that soul according its strings to where it reaches. So actually every new dimension carries all the strings and all the essence from all the entity that it's in touch with. And then you don't need a physical structure. When you start seeing things, you're going into it, and you see every time what's behind it. On a certain time, you don't have to think about it anymore. It's like drinking water. It's how you say it, like walking on the street. You don't have to think about it. It's there. You see it every time in everything. But yeah, in the beginning, I hear with my eyes more than with my ears. And with my ears, I hear more with my eyes. And that part has become, through the last 2 years, more in my soul. I hear and see with my soul. I understand now why I see better with my ears and hear better with my eyes. So I don't need my ears and eyes anymore to see and hear. So it's like you are not only there, you are here at the same time.
Yeah, even I think every blind man knows that they can see better than most people that can see.
That was why I came to this when I was young. I saw a lot of blind people and deaf people, and I saw how they work with it, and invalid people, and how they were stood in life. And I had more. I was so weak according to them. I was so ashamed those people are left out for things for life, I thought, and I am so much weaker because they fight. But I was always open with them. I had always open interaction, and they shared, I think, their souls with me. And so I received to see with my ears and to hear with my eyes. And I have that my whole life. And as child, my parents were always mad at me. They always said, "You see it wrong. You see it wrong." And at school, I had a teacher. He knew what I meant. And he said, "The time is not right. You cannot change books at school. It's not like that." Then I became blockaged, and I have my black period in my existence as a human being. Because it was not, there was no room to thrive with what we do, Rick. We talk everybody explains what he sees, and everybody is enjoying each other and sharing. So as it's supposed to be. Hello, do you hear me?
Right on, Arno. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, you're welcome.
Anybody else have something they'd like to share?
I found the concept of transferences concept in psychology is called transference, but they have moved the meaning towards a personal one, and it has to do with emotions and feels that one is receiving from other people. So it's a transfer. Right. So that is a transfer. But we know that transference is taking place whenever we place water next to ganses and fruit, orange, whatever. You see that this matter, this state is going to pass. So the information is flowing towards the weaker. And this is a transference from a physics point of view, plasmatic point of view. So here we would need to use this word exactly in the way scientifically it should be used. Transference, not in the psychoanalytic meaning. And this is taking place. But since matter is in fact a state of light itself, then light within the understanding of the holography, if you are a part of the fractal, this part is still the whole, is the complete image. So this links what we usually think is a distance from the particularity to the singularity. And once you are the fractal, you know that any part of it is the whole. And so this light is shining. There is no distance anymore. So nothing is a part, but it is the whole. This is saying that the transference occurs within singularity because everything is interconnected. And it is non-local, so it is presence. And it is conscient, so it is here, now, not there, anywhere, etc. No distance, it's here. So within you find space, outside you find space. It allows. This is interconnected. It allows.
We've got a problem here. The power just went out, and I think I'm going to be out of action in a few seconds here. You still hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
My screens just went black and then it's back on. I think I'm on emergency power or something here now. Oh, there sorry, just went out. I'm gonna have to go, everybody. Things are dying. Thanks. Have a great new year. We'll see you next week at this location, and the Knowledge Seekers Workshop will be happening at 9 a.m. Central European Time on Thursday.
Don't
Alright.
forget from 12
The
tomorrow. Tomorrow with Mr. Keshe, it's a change.
Right.
It's a what again? I couldn't
It's
hear you.
changed the hour of meeting
Oh,
tomorrow.
thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, yes. It's at, I forgot about that. It's at noon. 3
Yes.
more hours ahead. Instead of 9 a.m., it's at noon on Thursday for the, was it 309th, I think, Knowledge Seekers Workshop. All right, good info. I got about 10 seconds left before everything folds up here, so I need to do a orderly shutdown as soon as possible. Sorry about that, everyone. We're undergoing storm conditions here in the West Coast, and somehow the new year is starting without energy. Interesting. Without that kind of energy, anyway. Good energy here in the workshop. Thank you, everybody, for the Keshe Plasmic Reactor group for Wednesday, January 1st, 2020, 0101 2020. All right, bye for now, everyone. Get my goodness, things beeping, lights are out, things are beeping in the background. Oh, I gotta find my screens to be able to shut down. So everything jammed into one screen here. Here we go.